Have you ever wondered why some women can't stop thinking about a man long after he's gone, while others fade from her memory like a dream she no longer cares to remember? It's not about looks, money, or status. It's about presence, the kind of energy that lingers in her mind even when you're not around. The truth is, most men chase attention, while a few command it without saying a word. When a man learns how to carry himself with quiet certainty, with emotional depth and purpose, he becomes unforgettable. Not because he tries to be, but because he radiates something she can't quite explain. You see, attraction isn't built in moments of pursuit. It's built in silence. It's built in the moments when she's left wondering what's going on in your mind, when she feels your absence more than she ever noticed your presence. That's when the seed of curiosity takes root. And curiosity is the most powerful emotional magnet there is. A woman doesn't think about the man who's always available. She thinks about the one who gives her space to wonder, the one who carries mystery without arrogance, the one who doesn't chase, but moves with quiet self-assurance that whispers, "I know who I am." Most men believe that being remembered means doing more, saying more, showing more. But the opposite is true. The more you try to prove your worth, the more invisible you become. The more you try to impress, the less impact you leave. Real power lies in restraint, in holding back your need to be validated, in mastering your emotions when others are desperate for attention. When you stop trying to be seen and start focusing on being centered, she feels it. She senses that you're not moved by approval or fear. You're moved by purpose. And that kind of energy doesn't fade easily. What makes a woman think about you non-stop isn't a trick or a game. It's emotional gravity. It's the pull of a man who lives with intention, who doesn't lose himself trying to win someone else. It's the presence of a man who isn't trying to fill a void because he's already whole. That's what draws her in. Not your words, not your gestures, but the unshakable peace behind your silence. She feels safe in that peace. She respects it. And she can't stop thinking about it because it's rare. The world teaches you to chase, to prove, to perform. But that only makes you forget who you are. When you begin to stand still and let your energy speak for you, everything changes. You become the man who walks into a room and shifts its atmosphere without saying a word. You become the man who leaves a lasting impression, not because you demanded attention, but because your presence commanded it naturally. And that's when she begins to wonder about you. Not out of confusion, but out of fascination. Stay until the end, because once you understand the truth behind this kind of presence, you'll realize you never have to chase again. You'll see how to create the kind of emotional impact that lives rent-free in her mind, not through control or manipulation, but through mastery of self. By the end of this, you'll know how to become the man she can't stop thinking about, not because you need her attention, but because your energy makes her crave it. You said the moment a man learns to detach from the need to be wanted, he becomes the one who is remembered. Detachment isn't about coldness or indifference, it's about control. It's the quiet realization that your worth doesn't rise or fall based on who notices it. When a woman senses that you don't seek validation from her, something powerful happens. Her perception of you changes. You shift from being another man trying to win her approval to being a mystery she wants to understand. Because a man who doesn't chase validation is a man who already knows his value. And that kind of confidence is rare, unforgettable, and deeply attractive. You must understand that emotional detachment doesn't mean lack of feeling. It means emotional independence. It means you are no longer reactive to her moods, her attention, or her silence. You operate from your own rhythm. You move with purpose, not pressure. That calm separation creates space. And space is where desire grows. She begins to feel something unusual, a pull toward you without understanding why. It's not need, it's curiosity, it's not control, it's gravity. She feels drawn to your stability, to your calm defiance of emotional chaos. And every time she senses your silence, she starts to wonder what kind of man can stay so composed in a world that constantly begs for attention. When you detach, you stop feeding the cycle of emotional dependency that keeps most people trapped. You stop seeking comfort in her responses. You stop allowing her words or actions to define your mood. Instead, you build from within, through discipline, purpose, and clarity. The more you invest in your peace, the more powerful your presence becomes. And power doesn't need to announce itself. It speaks through consistency, through silence, through the way you move. That's what makes a woman think about you when you're not there. Because your energy lingers. It carries weight. It has depth. Most men confuse detachment with arrogance, but they are not the same. Arrogance pushes people away. Detachment pulls them closer. Arrogance says, I don't need anyone. Detachment says, I choose myself first. One is defense, the other is power. When a woman feels your detachment, she doesn't feel dismissed. She feels challenged. You represent something that doesn't bend easily, something that doesn't seek comfort through connection. And that challenge awakens something instinctive in her. She begins to crave the approval you don't offer. She begins to chase the attention you don't give. Because human psychology is simple. What is abundant is ignored. What is scarce becomes valuable. That's why the man who can walk away holds all the power. Not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to be controlled by fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. When you remove that fear, you become untouchable. Your peace becomes your weapon. Your silence becomes your statement. And your absence becomes her obsession. She'll think about you not because you asked her to, but because you left a space only strength can fill. Attachment is freedom. It's the point where your emotions no longer control your direction. It's where love becomes a choice, not a need. And that kind of freedom creates the kind of presence that stays in her mind long after you've gone. Because no woman forgets the man who mastered himself before he tried to master her attention. The most unforgettable men are those who live with direction. Purpose makes a man magnetic. It gives his energy shape, his silence meaning, his presence weight. When your life has purpose, every action you take carries intention. You no longer move out of boredom or need, you move out of vision. A woman can feel that. She can sense when your focus isn't scattered between distractions, when your energy isn't wasted chasing approval. She feels the calm strength of a man who knows where he's going, and it makes her curious. Because purpose is power, and power leaves an imprint that can't be ignored. When you build your life around purpose, you stop chasing temporary validation. You stop trying to impress anyone. You become the man who doesn't just exist. He creates, he builds, he transforms silence into progress. You stop needing to be remembered because your actions naturally make you unforgettable. The more you invest in your purpose, the more magnetic your presence becomes, because people, especially women, are drawn to momentum. They're drawn to the energy of someone who's alive with ambition, someone whose fire burns from within. That inner fire is what keeps you on her mind. It's not the words you say, it's the feeling she gets when she realizes you don't depend on her for direction. You already have one. A man with purpose doesn't chase relationships, he attracts them. His value doesn't come from who he's with, but from what he's building. His time becomes precious, his attention sacred. And when he does give it, it means something. That's why she can't stop thinking about him, because he's not available to everyone. His focus is selective, his energy protected. He moves through life like a man who knows he's the prize, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. He understands his worth isn't in being wanted, but in being purposeful. The human mind remembers what inspires it. When a woman sees a man deeply committed to something bigger than himself, it awakens admiration and desire. It makes her think of him, wonder about him, dream about him. Because purpose is rare. Most people drift through life reacting to whatever comes their way, but when you live with vision, you stand out without trying. You become the calm in the storm, the one who brings meaning where others bring chaos. That stability makes you unforgettable. Purpose transforms attraction into respect. It's not just about how you make her feel in the moment. It's about how your existence challenges her to think differently. You represent discipline, self-mastery, focus. The qualities that are disappearing in a world addicted to distraction. She thinks about you because your presence reminds her of something powerful, that true masculinity is rooted in direction. You don't need to explain. You just live it. And that silent consistency does more than any words ever could. When you live with purpose, you stop being reactive. You become the cause, not the effect. You decide what deserves your time, what deserves your peace, what deserves your energy. And that kind of control is deeply attractive. It creates a sense of mystery because she can feel that you're guided by something she can't fully grasp. She begins to associate your name with progress, your silence with strength, your distance with discipline. And soon she realizes You don't chase anyone because you're too busy chasing your purpose. That's the moment she starts chasing you in her thoughts again and again without even knowing why. When you become a man who walks with purpose, the next evolution is mastering your energy. Everything you think, say, and feel carries frequency. It's invisible, but it's felt. You've noticed how some people drain you while others uplift you. That's energy. And when your energy is focused, clean, and self-contained, it becomes impossible to forget. A woman doesn't remember you because of what you did. She remembers you because of how your energy made her feel. Your calm became her peace. Your silence became her reflection. Your presence became her comfort and her curiosity all at once. That kind of energy stays in the mind long after the body is gone. Most men waste energy on reaction, defending themselves, proving points, overthinking what others think. They don't realize that every time they give their attention to chaos, they weaken their power. Your energy is sacred, and how you spend it defines what you attract. When you choose calm over argument, silence over desperation, growth over gossip, you begin to radiate something different. You send a message that says, I'm in control of myself. That control doesn't just impress, it commands respect. It separates you from the noise. It turns you into the kind of man who doesn't chase validation because he already carries validation within. Energy mastery means you don't respond to everything that tries to pull you off balance. You protect your peace like it's gold. You don't let negativity invade your mental space. You don't allow attention to manipulate your focus. You live like a man who understands that his energy builds worlds, and that understanding changes everything. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. When you start honoring your energy, people begin to honor it too. You'll notice that when you stop chasing attention, it starts to chase you. When you stop trying to be seen, you're seen more clearly, because people can feel power even before they understand it. A woman will think about you non-stop when your energy lingers in her mind as something real, grounded, and rare. When your presence doesn't scream for attention but speaks through quiet strength. When you bring stillness into her chaos, she doesn't just remember you, she replays you. The memory of peace becomes addictive. She'll think of your calmness when her world feels loud. She'll crave your silence when everything around her feels shallow. Because your energy stands apart from everything else she's used to. It doesn't take, it gives. It doesn't demand, it attracts. And what attracts from authenticity never fades. But energy cannot be faked. It's built through discipline, through what you consume, how you think, and what you allow near you. Every time you protect your mind, every time you walk away from what drains you, you strengthen your frequency. That strength radiates without words. It speaks for you when you're not there. It enters rooms before you do. It makes people remember you for reasons they can't explain. That's what real power is, unseen but undeniable. You become unforgettable when your energy aligns with peace, focus, and purpose. You no longer need to prove your worth because your presence already proves it. And once you reach that level of control, you no longer chase connection. You create it effortlessly. She won't just think about you because she misses you. She'll think about you because your energy reminds her of what's missing in herself. That realization is what keeps you alive in her thoughts, long after the moment has passed. When a man masters his energy and lives with purpose, the next level is mastering presence. Presence is more than showing up. Presence is being fully engaged with yourself and the world around you in a way that cannot be ignored. It's the ability to command attention without demanding it. A woman notices when a man walks through life with grounded confidence, when every movement is deliberate, every word measured, every silence meaningful. Presence is magnetic because it signals security, self-awareness, and power. It's the invisible force that makes her think about you long after you've left. True presence comes from alignment. Your thoughts, your actions, your values, and your emotions all move together in harmony. When you live like this, people can sense it. They feel it. She will feel it. She will notice how your gaze lingers without trying, how your calmness fills a room without words, how your focus is so centered it's almost tangible. That kind of presence makes her subconscious take notice. She begins to remember you not because of the conversations you had or the moments you shared, but because your energy felt real, whole, and unmatched. That impression cannot be erased. Presence is not about forcing impact. It is about embodying it. It is about being so comfortable in your own skin that the world naturally leans toward your energy. Most men struggle because they seek to perform presence, but it cannot be performed. It must be lived. It must flow from confidence rooted in action, from calm built in discipline, from depth carved in self-mastery. When you cultivate that level of authenticity, your aura becomes a silent invitation, an invitation she cannot stop thinking about. She will try to understand it, but it cannot be explained, only felt. When you develop presence, you create a space where she feels both intrigued and inspired. Your focus on yourself and your growth challenges her to recognize your value without having to chase it. Your energy is like gravity. It pulls without pressure. It captivates without effort. It lingers even in absence. And this is where fascination begins. She thinks about you because you are fully engaged with life, not her approval. She notices how your thoughts carry weight, how your actions reflect intention, how your calm energy stands apart from the chaos most people emit. Presence is power disguised as ease, and that power is unforgettable. Mastering presence also means understanding the power of timing and restraint. You don't rush interactions. You don't overexpose yourself. You let moments breathe, letting curiosity grow in the spaces you leave. She will replay those moments in her mind, thinking about your words, your silence, your energy, and how it made her feel. That kind of subtle influence is stronger than any flashy gesture or constant attention. She will begin to associate your presence with a sense of safety, intrigue, and admiration that few men can generate. When your presence is anchored in authenticity and purpose, it shifts the dynamic of attraction. You are no longer just a man she met. You are the standard she subconsciously measures others against. You become the memory that won't fade, the feeling she can't shake, the energy that haunts her thoughts in quiet moments. And the most powerful part is that none of this is forced. It is simply the natural consequence of being a man who knows his worth, protects his energy, and lives intentionally. Presence is the invisible signature of a man who commands life rather than chases it. She will think about you non-stop, not because you did something extraordinary, but because you embody something extraordinary. You exist with focus, strength, and calm mastery. Your presence speaks where words cannot, and that is what leaves an indelible mark, a mark that draws her thoughts back to you again and again. When you combine purpose, energy, and presence, the next step is mastering your silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is a weapon, a tool, and a reflection of inner strength. Most men fill every moment with words, explanations, and justifications because they are afraid of being misunderstood or ignored. But the truth is, the man who speaks less and means more is the man who stays in a woman's mind long after the conversation ends. Silence creates space for thought, for curiosity, for longing. It forces attention without effort and commands respect without demand. Silence is powerful because it conveys control. When you don't react to every text, every emotion, every attempt to provoke a response, you demonstrate that your world does not revolve around the approval of others. That lack of dependence triggers fascination. It awakens a subconscious desire to understand the man who isn't easily moved. She begins to think about you because you do not bend to expectation. You do not fill voids with attention. You exist fully on your own terms, and that freedom is magnetic. The psychology behind this is simple yet profound. The mind remembers what it cannot fully grasp. When you hold back, when you allow her to wonder about your thoughts, your intentions, your feelings, she becomes actively engaged in keeping you in her mind. Your silence becomes a puzzle she wants to solve, a presence she wants to feel, an energy she cannot dismiss. And because humans are naturally drawn to what challenges them and what feels rare, you begin to occupy her thoughts without saying a single word. Mastering silence also means mastering timing. You speak when it matters and you act when it counts. Your words are deliberate, measured, and impactful. They carry weight because they are scarce, because they are earned. A man who understands the power of silence communicates volumes without noise. Every glance, every gesture, every pause becomes meaningful. She begins to associate your presence with depth, with thoughtfulness, with strength. And that association lingers long after your physical absence. Silence is not passive. It is active control over your attention, your emotions, and your interactions. It is the ability to step back and observe rather than react. It is the discipline to resist the urge to fill space with empty words. When you embody this, you signal confidence and maturity. You show that your life has weight, that your focus is not easily diverted, that your energy is protected. And that kind of clarity creates fascination, curiosity, and desire. She will think about you because she senses the man who stands apart from the noise, who does not need validation, and who acts from internal strength rather than external pressure. The impact of silence is subtle, yet it is permanent. It does not scream for attention, it commands it naturally. It leaves her replaying moments in her mind, wondering what you are thinking, feeling, or planning. She tries to fill the gaps you leave, and in doing so, she immerses herself in your presence even when you are gone. That is the power of controlled silence. The quiet that speaks louder than any words. The space that creates longing. The restraint that builds attraction. When you master silence, you master desire. You no longer chase it, you create it effortlessly. She will think about you non-stop, not because of what you say, but because of what you don't say. She will remember your energy, your focus, your calm, and your presence. She will wonder, imagine, and crave the depth that only comes from a man who has mastered himself first. Your silence becomes your signature, your power, and your magnet. It is the invisible force that leaves her unable to forget you. The final layer that transforms a man from memorable to unforgettable is mastering presence of intention. Every action you take, every word you speak, every choice you make becomes a reflection of who you are and what you stand for. When your life moves with clarity and purpose, it radiates in a way that cannot be ignored. A woman senses it instantly. She notices the energy of a man who is deliberate, focused, and unshakable. That sense of direction creates a magnetic pull that stays in her mind long after your presence has left the room. Intentional presence is not about grand gestures or constant affirmation. It is subtle, refined, and deeply powerful. It is the ability to exist fully in the moment while projecting the depth of a man who operates on his own terms. She doesn't just see you, she feels you. She senses the alignment of your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. That alignment speaks to her subconscious, signaling strength, confidence, and integrity. And when a woman feels this, she cannot help but return to the memory of you, replaying your energy over and over in her mind. Most men live without intention. They drift, react, and seek approval from others. They over-explain, overcompensate, and overcommit their energy to the wrong things. But a man who lives intentionally does the opposite. He understands the value of his time, his attention, his presence. He chooses where to focus, whom to engage with, and when to remain silent. That discipline communicates more than words ever could. It tells her you are not available to anyone who does not deserve your attention. That scarcity, combined with strength, creates fascination and longing that cannot be fabricated. Intentional presence also amplifies attraction because it carries certainty. When a woman senses that your choices are guided by principle and purpose rather than impulse or desire, she experiences respect, admiration, and intrigue simultaneously. She begins to measure her thoughts, her words, and her emotions against your calm strength. She begins to notice how rare it is to encounter a man who moves through life with that level of self-possession. And as she ponders your energy, your silence, and your focus, her mind keeps returning to you again and again, unable to let go of the impression you have created. This is the kind of presence that becomes imprinted in memory. It is the energy that lingers in the quiet spaces, the feeling that surfaces when she least expects it, the invisible weight that pulls her thoughts toward you. You do not force it. You do not manipulate it. You cultivate it through mastery of self, through discipline, clarity, and unwavering commitment to your own growth. And that cultivation is what makes a woman think about you non-stop. She feels the power in your alignment, and that feeling is unforgettable. Living with intentional presence transforms your relationships, your interactions, and your world. It shifts the dynamic from pursuit to influence. You no longer chase attention. Attention flows toward you naturally. You no longer seek validation. Your life validates itself through action and integrity. Your energy becomes a magnet because it is consistent, authentic, and deeply anchored in purpose. And in that consistency, in that authenticity, she finds herself thinking about you in ways that go beyond words, beyond explanation, beyond control. When every part of you, your purpose, your energy, your silence, and your presence aligns with intention, you become unforgettable. You exist as a man who is grounded, strong, and deliberate, and that presence cannot be ignored. She will think about you non-stop, not because of chance, but because your life, your energy, and your mastery of self have created an indelible impression. You leave behind a memory, of depth, strength, and calm that will echo in her mind long after you are gone.